All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Romain. Today I'm going to talk you about 50 tips in GlassFish. I will try to present all of them in 50 minutes. So a bit few words about me. I work for Oracle. I'm working on the GlassFish project since about 1 year. I'm responsible for everything related to build, packaging, installer, and JavaEE SDK. And I also contributed the application versioning in version 3.1. Okay, so standard legal slide. So the assumption for this presentation is that all of you already know GlassFish or already used GlassFish in the past. So if you don't really know what GlassFish is, I will just say a few words about it. GlassFish is the reference implementation for JavaEE. It's an open source project, and you can download it on glassfish.java.net. So today, 50 tips. It will be a fast-paced presentation. I will be covering a wide range of techniques and tips, so basically I won't dive pretty much into all of these tips. So I will just try to scratch the surface and to give you an overview of those tips. So it would be really nice if each of you could learn 1, 2, or 3 tips today. Okay, so all the tips I'm going to present today will be available on this URL, so you can just type 50 tips GlassFish on Google, or just go and check out this URL. All those tips are referenced. There is everything related to those tips, so blogs, documentations. Okay, so out of the box, GlassFish is really suitable for evaluation and trying things out. But if you are trying to interact with a remote domain administration server, so the so-called DAS, it won't work as is. So basically, the first thing you need to do is to enable the secure administration. So this is done with the enable secure admin command. So I will just show you. How this is done. So enable secure admin. All right, so it does not work as is the first time because it says that basically our password is empty, so we need to change the password. So default user admin, admin 123, admin 123. Oh, typo here. All right. Okay, and now I can enable secure administration. I need to provide my credentials. All right, and it says I have to restart the domain. So once you have done that, then you can simply access the admin console remotely or interact with the CLI command remotely. So where you are dealing with credentials, basically out of the box, GlassFish has an empty password. But if you have a password, basically, whenever you will try to type a command, it will prompt you for credentials. So it might be not very convenient. So basically, you can work around that using the login command. So let me show how it. Looks if I try to do a simple command like version. It asks me for my username and password all the time. So what you can do asadmin login, username admin, password admin 123. All right, and now if I try the same command, it works. Okay, so you can do that with several DAS, multiple machines. It will store everything on an encrypted key store in your home directory. So this multimode command is something really useful when you are doing some batch processing. Let's say you have a bunch of commands that you have to do every day or whenever you restart all your GlassFish instances. So instead of scripting asadmin and typing all the commands separately, you can just use multimode command and provide a batch file which would basically execute all the commands for you. So I prepared all the commands for you. So I prepared a batch file already, so let me show it to you. So this one will just create a cluster, 2 local instances part of this cluster, and start the cluster. So basically, once the command will be executed, I will be able to verify that the cluster is up and running. So multimode. So here I provide --ters, which is basically the verbose option. I provide the batch file using --file. So it will first create the cluster, then it will try to create 2 instances part of this cluster. So like here we can see that the first instance was started. The second instance will start very soon. All right, so now I should be able to list my clusters. Okay, so the cluster is up and running. Something people really don't know is that, let's say, if ASAdmin does not do something that you want to do with it, you can still script things around and pipe any command you want to ASAdmin. Then you can just do some text processing and do some things like that. So basically here the example is very simple. We just do a loop over 5 items to create 5 local instances. So you might not be aware of it, but ASAdmin is a client. It interacts with the DAS. So basically if something goes wrong between the client and the DAS, you won't see much things. So there is an environment variable. It's as_debug. So you just export it, you set it to true, and then when you will run the command, you will see a lot of things. So let me show you how it looks for things. So let me show you how it looks for the version command. So here it printed out a lot of stuff, right? So we can see, among other things, the raw response, some command processing options, and the internal URL it used to interact here with the DAS. So this is something we are using to debug things, actually. All right. So this one we also use it a lot for our tests on our ads and jobs. Basically, you export this command, you set it to a file somewhere on your file system, and we'll just record all the commands that you typed, plus the exit code, which is associated with it. So basically, let's say you have in some integration test, and you are setting up an environment with it, and something went wrong with this environment. You want to see what happened. So, for instance, I will export this variable somewhere on my file system. All right, and then I will type version uptime, and I will make a typo. All right, so here I did execute 3 commands. The 2 first went fine, and the third one did not execute successfully. So as_logfile, right. So I did use this file before, so this is why you can see a bunch of things here, but basically we can see the last 3 commands I did type, version, uptime, and the last one. So, something really easy. So, many of you are using GlassFish, I guess. If you want to build the workspace, which was used to produce the binaries of your GlassFish version, you just check out the SDN workspace. You replace here trunk with tags and main by the number of your version. So in my case, it will be 3.1 or 2.2. Then you just set the Maven ops. You step into that directory and you type mvn install. So we are producing some promoted builds and likely builds. You can download them on the third URL on the screen. We are also deploying all the promoted artifacts, so you can access the Nexus on maven.java.net, and you can consume the latest artifact from GlassFish there. So just note that you can build the 3.x branch only using JDK 6 and Maven 2, and JDK 7 and Maven 3 for the trunk, GlassFish 4. Okay, so a small tip about the installer. Almost everybody is using the zip installer. That's normal, basically. You just unzip the stuff, you go into the directory, there is a pre-created domain in it, and you use it. It's really, really simple. But you might want to do something more customized for your installation. Let's say you want to create a cluster, you want to create a specific domain which is running on specific ports, you want it to be installed on a specific location. Well, so in that case, you might want to use the installer. So you will use the installer like this on the right side, but you will need to provide an answer file. So how do you produce the answer file? That's the tip. Then you just provide -n for dry mode. You provide an answer file. You do a first dry mode with the installation. You go through the UI steps. You do the installation as if you were installing. And then at the end, you have an answer file. And you just need to provide -s-a. So all the installers that are described on the screen here, they are for GlassFish open source version, but all those flavors, Windows, Unix, and AIX are available for Oracle GlassFish Server as well. So this one is really easy as well. So basically, if you don't know the name of a command, just use list commands to list all the commands that GlassFish has. But there are a lot of commands. So basically, I will show you this on my shell. So here it printed a lot of commands. So you might not know what those are. So there are remote commands and local commands. All right. So you can just sort them using local only equal true to print only the local commands. So local commands such as start, stop domain, list domain, this kind of stuff. Or remote only equal true, it will print only the remote commands. Only the remote commands. Okay, so this one is about logging. So basically, by default, GlassFish uses the Java util logger. You may be tempted to use log4j. So this is really a straightforward step. You just grab a log4j jar, you drop it into the GlassFish lib directory, then you create your log4j property file, you drop it into the config directory of your domain. You create this JVM option here, and you restart the domain. So let me show you how it looks. So let me check. I have log4j here, all right. I have a very small log4j property here. So in this case, it will not print things in the server log. It will just dump them into another log file. So I will need to create a JVM option, as shown on the screen. And whenever you set a JVM option, you need to restart the domain. Okay, so domain is starting. All right. So I did prepare a very, very simple servlet. Maybe I can show it to you. Here. So basically, this servlet just uses log4j and prints 2 log statements in the logs. So this servlet should be already deployed. It is. So let's check it out. So I did one request, and here we can see the 2 log statements. So if you don't want to provide this on the whole application server, you can simply drop a log4j.xml into your web INF directory. And this way you can configure log4j per application. So password aliases. External resources, services in GlassFish, they are called resources. Sorry. Most of these resources, basically, they require passwords, like database. And you might not be able to write the password in the domain XML. That's okay, but what could you do then? So in GlassFish, we provide something called password aliases. So basically, we will just create password alias, the name of your alias, then you will be prompted for the password. Your password will be stored into the encrypted key store. And then instead of putting the password in the domain XML, you will use this syntax to map the password with the alias. Sorry. Okay, so let's suppose you want to set up a cluster. You have a bunch of raw machines, but nothing, like there is no GlassFish installed there. So basically, you want to install a cluster and a bunch of nodes in one step. So basically, this is possible using the install node command. The assumption here is that basically SSH access is available for those machines. So then you start the command, and it will basically create a zip out of your existing installation, or you can provide another zip. It takes a list of hosts as argument. It takes also the path that you want to install GlassFish on those targets, and then it will install GlassFish and set up the nodes for all those targets. So basically, after that, the creation of the cluster is pretty straightforward. So just a note here, since version 3.1.2, there is an alternative to SSH on Windows. It's DCOM. So basically, the command in that case would be install node DCOM. All right, so this is mostly a developer use case, but let's say typically if you are messing up the OSGi bundles, GlassFish won't start. The OSGi runtime, in our case Felix, it won't start. You will see nothing in the server log. So what can you do then? So the old-fashioned way in GlassFish was to start GlassFish using java-jar, glassfish.jar. Okay, all right. But this is not really supported at this time because things could be removed without any notice. So the only supported way nowadays is start domain-v. Basically, it will just start GlassFish. It will be stick into your TTY, and you will see basically all the output it dumps. And if you break the process using Ctrl+C, basically you will stop GlassFish. So another note here, if you debug GlassFish using start domain script, then you just do asadmin start domain --debug. It will print out the debug port, and then you can attach your code quite easily. So let's say you have more than one domain running on your machine, and some of them might be not running actually, so you don't really know what is the domain which is running currently. So you just use list domains. It will print you the list of all the domains and which ones are running. The uptime command also, it's pretty straightforward if you want to know how much time the domain has been up and running. Okay, so there is pretty much the same kind of command, but for clusters or targets, basically. It could be nodes or a cluster. So I will show you a brief example on my cluster. Yeah, so my cluster is not started. So let's try to start the local instance E2, I2. Okay, never mind. Okay, so I just talked briefly about that before. Since version 3.1.2, there is an alternative to SSH on Windows. It's called DCOM. It's built in by default to Windows, so basically you don't have to run into the pain of setting SSH on Windows. You just need your administrator to give you the proper access, but then you can simply run this command to set up DCOM for GlassFish. So set up local DCOM. You can verify it using validate DCOM, and then you can use the usual create node DCOM, delete node DCOM, install node DCOM, uninstall node DCOM. And this stuff is quite well integrated in the admin console. Okay, so this is really useful. Let's say you don't want to set up SSH or any mean to create a cluster. So you can do that basically. So you will have your DAS, you will start the domain, you will enable secure admin because your remote machine is going to access or interact remotely with the DAS. You create your cluster, and then on the remote machine, basically you just interact with the DAS. You create your local instance on the DAS using this command here, -host, -host, sorry. And then you start the local instance. And then when you come back on the DAS, basically you list the cluster, and magically the cluster will be up and running. So you don't need SSH or DCOM for this. So this is something which is available in the GlassFish API. You can listen to server-wide events. So basically, when the domain is ready, when the domain is going to shut down, when applications are starting, this kind of thing. So here's a very, very simple example. You just create this class. You grab the GlassFish API.jar either from the module directory or from Maven. Then you drop your jar or your class into glassfish/lib. You restart the domain, and it's working. Okay, application versioning. So this is something which can be really convenient for people which are using GlassFish in production. Let's say you have a very big application and you want to do multiple deployments of the same application, but you may want to keep all those versions on the disk. So this is what the versioning of GlassFish is about. So basically, it's one version enabled at a time, so-called on this versioning. So here, this example, basically, it's a so-called pre-deployment of version RC1 of my app. So we just use a very simple syntax. Basically, the syntax is you separate the name with a syntax separator, in that case, colon. On the left part, it's the untagged version, which is basically, if you don't use the versioning at all, basically the untagged version is the name of the application. And then you can qualify any application using this. In that case, it will be RC1. So this is what we call version identifier. So in that case, we did a pre-deployment. The application is not enabled at all, and we can just switch to any version we want using this full name here. So some of the commands can accept wildcards. So in that case, the version identifier becomes a version expression. So you can, let's say, disable a set of versions or undeploy set of versions. You can show the status of set of versions. So this is really convenient. Okay, so directory listing and symlinks. So out of the box, GlassFish does not provide this stuff, but basically this is really easy to do. So you just edit the default WebXML of the default servlet. So the default servlet is the servlet that serves the static content in GlassFish. So you just find this element, you change false to true, that's okay, and then you can either stop the domain, edit the domain XML, put this property in the virtual server, and then you can symlink anything into your doc root directory, and it will be available for, it will be exposed by GlassFish. Okay, so this is something that people might want to use, actually. So whenever you install GlassFish on a machine and you want GlassFish to start and to be, let's say, managed by the service of your operating system, it can be quite difficult. So there is a nice command in GlassFish, create-service. It's able to create services for Windows, Linux, and Solaris, basically. So you execute it with superadmin, and then it will do something like that. So here it says that it's running on Solaris, this one. So it's gonna create a service for our domain. Then it says the manifest here that it created this one at this location. And at the end, it prints out like 3 commands that we can use to manage or interact with our service. So getting the status, start and stop. So this is really a nice command. So server monitoring. Basically, GlassFish has many ways to monitor what's going on. So you can use the admin console, the CLI, REST, or JMX. So there are really like a lot of ways to interact with it. So the monitoring data is maintained in a tree. This tree is changing all the time. So what changes the tree basically is the modules on which the monitoring is enabled, let's say web container, HGB container, the applications which are deployed, and the applications which are currently running. So when you enable the monitoring for a specific module, you can basically choose 3 levels. So the one which is by default, of course, it's off, so monitoring is not enabled. But you can provide either low or high. So low will just print out simple statistics, and high basically will do the same thing, but instead it will just get some method counts, like and how much time was spent in each method. So it's not enabled by default, but you can enable it quite easily. So I will try to show you. Okay, so this time I'm gonna just enable the monitoring for the web container. All right, so the next slide is about getting some data from the monitoring. So as I said, the tree changes in function of the loaded modules, which modules on which the monitoring is enabled, and all the applications which are deployed. Okay. So using the CLI, you can get anything from the tree, but you will use the asadmin get command -m for monitoring. Let's say you don't really know what you want to monitor right now, but you can just provide a wildcard here, and it will just dump everything it's monitoring. So then you can just look around this stuff and says, okay, I want to monitor one of those things. So you can also use a list command here, basically to just print a list of the things that it monitors without giving you the data. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the stuff you can find on Linux, like vmstat or this kind of thing. So basically, maybe netstat does the same. So you have a command that accepts an interval, and then it will just keep printing out all the monitoring data. So I'm just going to show you this on the web module. So here, okay, it's printing out some monitoring data, but I don't know what the headers means. So you can type H at any moment, and basically it prints the descriptions of all the headers. So I think here we have some data for ASLC. So basically ASLC is number of active servlets that are loaded. Okay, so I've shown you how to use the CLI to get the monitoring data, but you can also use JMX client. So the tip here is that basically you might don't know what string like this to use for connecting to your GlassFish using your JMX client. So the tip is that basically you can find this string on the server log. So whenever the server is started and ready, you can find this string here. So I will just copy it. I start JVisual VM. Okay, all right. So let me put that. Okay, so I won't explain you what JVisual VM does, but basically you can get a bunch of things from it, JVM stats or thread dumps, these kind of things. Okay, so this one is about OSGi. So there is a built-in CDI extension in GlassFish. It's called CDI OSGi. It was introduced for GlassFish 3.1, if I'm correct. So basically, let's say you have an OSGi service that you exported in the GlassFish runtime, and you want to consume this service from a JavaEE application. So it's really easy. On the bottom of or on the top of your @inject for this service, you just use @OSGi service. Okay, so still on the OSGi topic, you might want to reach or to interact with GlassFish directly on the OSGi layer. So I'm not sure if you are familiar with this, but GlassFish runs on top of Felix, and there is a shell with Felix. It's called Gogo, and it's not enabled by default in GlassFish. So here is the way to enable it. You edit this file, glassfish/config/osgi.properties. You find these properties, you set it to 3, or you can use JVM option. You will need to restart GlassFish if it's already started. So let me show you. So by default, the start level is 2, so that's why you need to put it to 3, so that this way the Gogo bundles will be started, then you restart the domain. And then when it's done, you can basically, I'm sure you already know it, but you can connect to Gogo using Telnet on port 6666. All right, so brief overview of Gogo. You just type help, you get the list of commands. Very useful commands are basically lb list bundles, start, stop, install, and something I will just show you briefly, inspect. So let's say most of the developers, when they do have some wiring issues, what they want to do is they want to see basically what are the exported package by one bundle, or let's say the import package. So I will get the list of bundles, and I will try to get the list of exported package by GlassFish web container. So inspect P for package, C for capabilities. So basically those are the exported package. I provide the bundle number here, and there are no exported package. Imported package. Okay, there are a lot. So that's it. Okay, so still on the OSGi topic, you may want to embed GlassFish into your own OSGi runtime. So there are two options for you. The first one is basically you will need to create your bundle activator as described here. So you get the bundle context, you install glassfish.jar from the bundle context, and then you can interact with the bundle. So basically you will just start it. And then the second option, which I'm going to show you, you just grab, let's say, Felix distribution, you unzip it, you start the Felix shell like you are in Gogo, and then you can install glassfish.jar and start the bundle. Fish.jar and start the bundle. So I will need to stop my domain. Okay, so I already prepared Felix distribution. All right, so there are already some bundles as part of the distribution. What I'm going to do here, I will just copy the location of my GlassFish. All right, I will do install file, then glassfish/modules/glassfish.jar. Okay, so there is a new bundle which was installed. It's not started yet, so I will start it. Okay, so GlassFish is starting. And then I should be able to reach my servlet. All right. And I will start my domain again. Okay. Okay. So let's say you are having troubles with GlassFish. You want to send a message on the GlassFish forums or the GlassFish mailing list. Most likely, you will be asked for a thread dump or more information. So you know it already, I'm pretty sure of it. So basically, you could use JPS, JStack, or jmap-e to provide all those kinds of informations. But there is a nice command in GlassFish. It's called generate JVM report. And you can basically generate the same thing in a different manner. So let me show you. Here, it prints a lot of information about our JVM memory. And you can also generate a thread dump here. All right, so if you want, or if you run into troubles with GlassFish, you want to provide us some information, you can use this command. So, remote deployment in NetBeans. All right, so GlassFish is well integrated in NetBeans. Usually people use it on the local host, but if you want to interact with a remote DAS, it's possible. It's really, really easy as well. So first, you are interacting with a remote DAS. You need the secure administration to be enabled. You need a local GlassFish installation for the libraries, and then you can use it. The only thing which does not work is deploy on save, but everything is really transparent there. Okay, so there is a REST interface in GlassFish. So GlassFish being the JavaEE reference implementation, of course, it uses Jersey, the JAX-RS reference implementation. There are two main entry points. Management, where you can interact basically with all the AS admin commands, or monitoring. So this one is the entry point for getting the monitoring data. So here, a very small example, you want to see the server logs from your domain using the REST API. So you just use this command. And here, a bonus tip, I did provide -upperD headers.txt to save the headers in a separate file. Why? Because there is a custom HTTP header, which is xtext append next, which will give you the next URL you should use for getting the next data of your server log. So yeah, small shell if you want to do that. Okay, so let me show you the REST API. So this is the monitoring. I want this. Okay. So by default, when you will try to access the REST API, it will display it in HTML format. So you can navigate through it quite easily, and you can interact with the REST API. So let's say log4j example, so the servlet I was using before, you want to change the context root of this. You can just change this, hit update, and then it's updated. So if I go here, basically I need to change my context root. All right. So there are, of course, other regular formats such as JSON or XML, and you can control them quite easily using the suffix. So let's say I want to see this page in XML or JSON. I just do .xml here or .json. All right. So you can also access the, okay, so I already showed you that. So yeah, so let's say you are interacting with a remote desk, but you don't want a GlassFish installation in order to run the ASMin commands. So you might want to be tempted to use the REST interface. So here, let's say you want to deploy an application, you will simply use this curl command. So you are using post operation to deploy an application. You provide the path of your local WAR file to upload it. You use delete HTTP operation to undeploy your application on the /application/application, the name of your application. Or you can also use get command to get any value, such as the version. Okay, so domain templating in GlassFish, there is a default domain which is template, which is used to create your domain XML when you are using the create domain command. But if you want to create a custom domain which has, let's say, some custom JVM options or other things like what I did show you before, like the directory listing or this kind of stuff, then you can simply create a new template. So what should you do? You should just copy the template which is in GlassFish lib templates. You create your own template, let's say mydomain.xml, and then when you will use create domain template, you will just you will just provide --template, the name of your domain template. And if you want to verify that your created domain is valid, of course, you can use verify-domain-xml. Okay, GlassFish embedded. So I guess most of you are familiar with this, but basically you can use GlassFish inside your JVM. You can use a very nice API to interact with GlassFish, so start it, stop it, deploy your application. So there are two flavors of GlassFish embedded, GlassFish embedded web profile and GlassFish embedded all. So those jars are available in the GlassFish installation, but they are also available from Maven. So I will show you Maven. So I will show you a very small example for unit test. So here is a test class. So basically, I set up my GlassFish at the beginning of the test. So here I bootstrap the GlassFish. I set up the port, which is 8888. I clean up things once the test is run, and then here is my test. So basically what my test does, it does a directory deployment. So it grabs the server class from the target classes directory. It creates a so-called virtual archives where you can provide some kind of metadata for the web XML or this kind of stuff. So then I just deploy my application here. I do some assertion on the content of the servlet. That's it. And then if you run it, I can show you how it looks like. No. Okay, so here GlassFish Embedded is starting. It deployed the application, it did the assertions, and then the test succeeded. So it's really easy to use. Okay, so you might know JT:/run, the famous Maven plugin. So there is the exact same thing using the GlassFish Embedded. Basically, you can define execution in your POMs to start GlassFish Embedded, to stop GlassFish Embedded, or to deploy applications. And there is also a very convenient mojo for this plugin. It's run. So let me show you. So let's say you are not using any kind of IDE, but you are using only command lines. You are compiling your application separately, and you just want a convenient way to redeploy your application. So there is a POM where I did only define a configuration for the plugin, so no execution. In this case, I will just use embedded glassfish as the prefix. It will deploy my application on the context root for the final name, so it will be maven-glassfish-embedded example. So let me show you. So embedded glassfish:/run. Okay, so here GlassFish Embedded was started. It did deploy my application on this context root. So let me check briefly. Okay, 1990. Oops. Okay, so I will just change the JSP page to show you what you can do. So let's say devox here. I will rebuild it. All right. So if you want to redeploy the application, you just hit enter. It will redeploy the application, and you can keep it enter whenever you want to redeploy the application. And then you can hit X to exit. Okay, so there are two flavors of doing backups. There is one possibility in the open source version, which is a bit manual. So you use the backup domain command, you provide a backup directory, and you just type the name of the domain you want to backup. You can, of course, restore the domain or list the backup. So those are the very simple backups operations. There are a bit more in the Oracle GlassFish Server, the commercial edition. So basically, you can back up the configuration on top of the domain, and you can also schedule your backups. So yeah, so there is a very nice way if you want to trace the SQL queries in GlassFish. So of course, you can do that with your persistent.xml with JPA, all right. But maybe you want to do that on a much lower level, on the JDBC resource level. So there is an API in GlassFish, SQL trace listener. So you implement this interface, and then you can record the trace, the SQL trace. So let me show you how it looks. There is a built-in implementation for this. So set, okay, so you just need to do this, set server JDBC connection, the name of your pool here, in my case, Derby pool, and okay, you will need to restart the server. So I did provide a servlet here, which does simply create some new statements in my database. So let's check that my domain started. It is. So it just inserts some new data, all right. And now if I'm looking at my server log here, I will see statements, my trace records. So you may want to, let's say, create your own trace listener. In that case, you will simply need to create it, drop it in the glassfish lib directory, and you will change this property like this, for instance, and you will just start the domain. Okay, so if you are using a JDBC statement and connection, and let's say if you don't close the connection or the statement, those connections won't be returned to the pool. So it might be a performance issue. Okay, so in GlassFish, you can print aggressive log messages using those three properties. So you will basically use the exact same command as I used before, but instead of the name of the SQL trace here, you will just provide the name of those property. So the three first one, basically, you can control how aggressive GlassFish will print some logs. And the two last ones, basically, they will reclaim those connections. So if the software exits and if those connections are not closed properly, basically GlassFish will just grab them and put them back in the pool. Okay, so there is a very nice command framework in GlassFish. This is basically how we build all our commands in GlassFish. So this is again a GlassFish API. Let me start NetBeans again. So you will need basically to create an OSGi bundle to drop it into the glassfish/modules directory. And then once GlassFish is started, your command should be available. Okay, so let me show you. So here I did create a command called create my container. So you just need to annotate a class with @service, the name of your command. You need to implement the admin command interface, which is inside the GlassFish API. And then you are pretty much done with your command. You just provide some fields for the parameters. This one is an operand. @primary or true. Those two ones are parameters which are optionals true. And this one is a parameter which is basically required. And then here is the body of our method. You just do some logic and then you can return the exit code using this. So either success, failure, or warning. So I do have this command already into my GlassFish. All right. So here you can see that it prints a very nice man page. So if you want to create the man page, it's really easy as well. So in my case, in the Maven project, it's under the resource directory, local strings.property. So you just provide a very simple property file. And here we can see, let's say, the .usage text property. I provided the usage. Okay, so if you want to know how GlassFish figures out which JVM or which Java installation to use when it starts, here it is. So there is a precedence. So the first things it looks for, basically, it's inside the domain XML. It looks inside the Java config attribute and gets what's in the Java home. So if this is not set, then it will look inside the as-env file, which is inside glassfish-config. Then it will look for your Java home environment variable. And then it will look for the Java home property that was inside the JVM of asadmin. So asadmin is a client. It has already a java.home property. So GlassFish domain will look for this property if none of the three first were set. Okay, so yeah, so basically you most likely want to put some JVM option in GlassFish. Let's say you want to increase the heap, or you want to provide the log4j property file like I did. So there are two ways. First way, you stop your domain, you edit the domain XML, you do some things, and then you start the domain. All right. But it might be tricky if you want to target, let's say, a cluster or the DAS or the cluster plus the DAS plus some instances. So then you will have to edit multiple parts of the file. So you might prefer to use the JVM option commands like list JVMs, create JVMs, or delete JVMs. So I think you already saw it before because I was using it. So yeah, so in that case, we are increasing the heap on the cluster using create JVM options, and then we are listing JVM options. Okay, so there is a software packaging system which is built in GlassFish. It's called IPS. It's what is used currently in Solaris 11. It stands for Image Packaging System, and it's brought into GlassFish through the project which is called Update Center. There are two interfaces that you can use, the CLI and the UI. The CLI is called PKG and the UI is called Update Tool. So this is repository-based packaging, so you are only interacting with repositories, so it's using HTTP. And you have to know that a GlassFish installation basically is an image of an IPS repository. So what does it mean? It means that your GlassFish installation is bound or linked to use this repository. So let's say in some metadata file in GlassFish, you will find those repositories which are defined. So you can use a PKG command line. So I'm going to show you that. So here it prints out all the list of packages with their versions, but maybe you don't know what those mean. So you can use -s option. It will print the summary. So let's say here for Jersey, it says Jersey Core RESTful Web Services for GlassFish. Okay. You can also use -u option, which should print you all the available packages out there, but basically I'm using the latest version, so there is nothing. But it should print something like this. If you're familiar with the tools that are available, let's say on the Debian-based Linux distribution, there is apt, and when you want to upgrade your Debian distribution, you're doing apt-get this-upgrade. So this is the exact same thing, but in GlassFish, you will do pkg image update. It will look for all the new packages that are available on the repositories. So there is also the UI. When you install GlassFish with the installer, basically it will ask you for configuration for the update center. And if you are doing this through the installer, it will install you this notifier. So whenever there is a new GlassFish version released, you will be able to see this very nice pop-up that will ask you to update your packages. So if you don't want this, you can still configure it from the update tool. So let me show you how this UI looks. So you can manage multiple installation here, so you will have more than one row. Let's say you can see all the installed components. So if you're familiar with the Linux tools or Ubuntu, it looks like Synaptic. So you should be able to see all the updates, but in my case, there are none. And then here, those are the contributed packages which are on the different repositories and not installed by default. So let's say you're looking for Ant or some other packages that are available here. So let's say Hibernate or these kind of things. So you are already using a GlassFish version. You want to upgrade to a new version. So you have two possibilities. First thing, you grab the new version, you install it, and then you try to upgrade the previous installation. So there is a tool called AS Upgrade. So if you started as is, it will be a UI client, or if you started with the -c option, it will be a command line client. So what it does is really simple. It just copies the source domain into the target domain, and then it starts the domain using --upgrade. So you can also do what we call an in-place upgrade. So basically, you are not downloading a new installation. You are just using your installation and the Update Center project. So you update your GlassFish image using the pkg command line or the update tool. And then the next time you start your domain, you use just start domain --upgrade. Okay, so let's say you want to buy a license for GlassFish. You are already using GlassFish open source, and you want to do an in-place upgrade from open source to commercial. So as I said, Your GlassFish image is bound to the open source repositories, so the first thing you need to do is you need to change all those repositories. So here we just unset all the repositories, then you add the licensee repositories, and then you install all the add-on components. So those are actually meta packages which will just pull out all the other packages. So now let's say you are inside a closed network, you cannot reach the internet, and you want to install patches. So what you can do, you can download the toolkit image of the update center. So basically you have all the server-side things, and then you will download the repository from our website, so support.oracle.com. So it contains basically all the new packages from the patch release. You just unzip it, you use the pkg.dpod, which is inside the toolkit, and you start your own repository inside your network. And then the same operation, you will need to change all the repositories of your GlassFish images in order to consume the packages which are installed there. Okay, so everybody basically is using the internet when they are running into troubles, but there is a very nice documentation in GlassFish. You should check it out if you don't know it already. So this is available online at this URL, or you can get a zip which contains all the PDFs. Okay, so I guess you already know this, but here is how to reach us. The forum and the mailing list on java.net. So if you don't know it already, the forum and the mailing list are bound each other. So you can send a message either on users@glassfish.java.net or the forums. It's the same. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and the very nice blog of the aquarium. So if you want to stay tuned with everything which is related to GlassFish, just check this URL out. Okay, any questions?
What about the GlassFish plugin for JVisual VM? Is this something which is still developed and maintained?
I don't think so. So you were asking if the GlassFish plugin for JVisual VM is still developed. I'm not really aware of it, but I don't think so.
So I was just wondering. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.